You know this feeling. You sit down to do the work that matters, to write the report, to start the project, to finally learn the skill. You have the time. You have the intention. The path forward is clear. And then it happens. A voice, just behind your thoughts, begins its commentary. This isn't good enough yet. What if you fail publicly? You should have started days ago. Everyone else finds this easy. It's not shouting. It's a steady, convincing drip. And under that pressure, your focus shatters. You procrastinate. You overthink every minor decision. You might even spiral into a quiet shame about why you can't just do the thing. This experience is so universal. We've given that voice many names. The inner critic, the gremlin, the saboteur. And most of us believe its core message, that this voice is a flaw, a personal defect in our discipline or character. We think mastery means finally silencing it, outmuscling it with sheer willpower. But what if you've been misunderstanding the entire system? What if that voice isn't a flaw, but a function? Neuroscience and psychology point to a different truth. Your inner critic is, at its origin, a cognitive security system. Its evolutionary job was brilliant. Scan the environment, identify risks, and alert you to potential danger. This kept you safe. It was a survival mechanism. But in the modern world, the threats have changed shape. Now, that same alarm system interprets creative risk, social uncertainty, difficult effort, and the possibility of failure as existential dangers. So when you sit down to do meaningful work, your built-in protector sees a threat landscape. Its solution? Sound the alarm. Stop the action. Make you hesitate, doubt, and retreat to safety, which now looks like distraction, perfectionism, or avoidance. The problem isn't you. The problem is a magnificent, ancient system applying a Stone Age solution to a digital age problem. You are not broken. You are equipped with a vigilant guard who doesn't understand its new assignment. This reframe is everything. It moves you from a war with yourself, which you can never truly win, to a project of management, translation, and retraining. That is the promise of this video. We are going to reframe your inner critic from an enemy to a manageable signal. First, through a powerful parable that will make this dynamic viscerally clear. And then, with practical, actionable steps to regain control, not by fighting the voice, but by understanding and redirecting its energy. It begins by meeting the guard. So meet the guard. In a village built along an old, important road, the people hired a watchman. His job was simple, vital, and born of a real need. To stand in the tower, look to the horizon, and spot genuine threats, marauding bands, wildfires, floods, so he could ring the bell and the village could rally. For this, they paid him. For this, they trusted him. He was not a villain. He was a protector. And for a long time, the system worked. A real threat would appear, he'd ring the bell, the villagers would act, and the threat would pass. But over years of quiet, something in the guard's mind began to shift. His mandate, spot threats, became his identity. His worth became tied to finding danger. And in the absence of obvious, physical dangers, his vigilance had nowhere to go but inward, scanning the landscape of the everyday. A traveler approaching at dusk became a spy. The rustle of the night wind through the trees became an advancing army. The creak of the old mill became the sound of the gates being breached. His alarm bell, once reserved for clear and present danger, began to ring constantly. At first, the villagers would drop everything, grab their tools, and run to the walls, only to find a stray dog, or a shadow, or nothing at all. After the 10th, the 20th, the 100th false alarm, they stopped responding. But they didn't stop hearing it. The constant ringing didn't make them safer. It paralyzed them. It drained their energy, shattered their concentration, and made them afraid to even start projects beyond the walls. Why build if it might just be destroyed by an invasion tomorrow? Why plant seeds if a fire is always imminent? The guard, convinced he was doing his job with utmost dedication, was now the source of the village's stagnation. And he couldn't see it. This is your inner critic. It is not a flaw in your character. It is not a saboteur who hates you. It is, evolutionarily, the watchman in the tower. Its original job was brilliant. Scan the environment for threats to your survival, predators, abandonment, exclusion from the tribe, and ring the alarm bell, anxiety, shame, panic, so you would take action to stay safe. But you do not live in that village anymore. The threats have changed. Now, the guard's bell rings at the shadow of creative risk, the vulnerability of putting an idea into the world. It rings at the uncertainty of a new project, the unknown territory beyond the village walls. It rings at the mere effort of deep focus, interpreting the mental strain of concentration as a danger of depletion or failure. The system is functioning perfectly, but it's calibrated for a world that no longer exists. It mistakes shadows for sabers, feedback for warfare, and the normal friction of growth for a life-threatening emergency. So when you sit down to work and feel that wave of resistance, that voice listing every reason you'll fail, that's not an enemy attack. That's the overzealous guard, ringing the bell with all his might, pointing at a shadow and screaming threat with the same urgency he'd use for a real fire. And your focus shatters, not because the threat is real, but because the alarm is so loud. Understanding this changes everything. The goal is not to kill the guard. You need that function. The goal is to retrain him, to teach him to distinguish between a shadow and a sword. And it starts by learning to recognize the three most common shadows he mistakes for danger. The false alarms that hijack your focus most often. These are the false alarms, the shadows he mistakes for swords. And if you can't name them, you have to obey them. The first, and perhaps the most dramatic, is catastrophizing. This is the guard seeing a single crack in the wall and sounding the alarm for total structural collapse. The psychological mechanism here is called fortune-telling, predicting a negative future with absolute certainty and magnification, blowing the consequence out of all proportion. In the real world, it sounds like this. You miss a small deadline on a low-priority task. The guard screams, "See? You're unreliable. This proves you can't handle this job. You're going to fail completely." Your focus shatters because you're no longer solving a task. You're mentally fleeing a catastrophe that only exists in the guard's prediction. The reframe is disarmingly simple. Scale it back to fact. Ask, what is actually true right now? Not the story of ruin, but the single, contained event. A mistake is a data point, not a verdict. The second false alarm is personalization. This is the guard interpreting every external event as a direct commentary on your core worth. The mechanism is a failure of differentiation, the inability to separate an outcome from an identity. Feedback, market forces, even a stray comment, all get filtered as evidence about you. So a colleague says, "Let's take another pass at this section," and your focus evaporates into a spiral of shame. You're not editing a document anymore. You're defending your entire existence. The work becomes intolerable because it feels like an inquisition. The cognitive reframe here is to externalize the data, to thank the guard for his concern, and say, "This isn't about me. This is about the work." Separate the signal from the self. The work can be improved. You are not being diminished. The third alarm, which might be the most insidious for high achievers, is all-or-nothing thinking. This is the guard's binary lens. If it's not flawless, it's a failure. If you're not profoundly productive, you've been lazy. The mechanism is dichotomous reasoning, and it kills focus because it makes starting impossible. Why begin a workout if you can't do the full hour? Why write if the first draft won't be genius? It sabotages focus by raising the stakes of every single action to an unsustainable level. The energy required to meet perfect is so vast that paralysis is easier. The reframe is to introduce the concept of good enough for now, or the minimum viable action. You disarm the all-or-nothing alarm by deliberately choosing a something. A paragraph, a 5-minute sketch, a single email. You prove to the guard that partial progress is not a threat. It's how the work actually gets done. Catastrophizing, personalization, all-or-nothing thinking. These are the guard's primary scripts. When you feel that jolt of anxiety, that urge to flee your desk, that heavy fog of shame, pause. Look for the script. Is he predicting a catastrophe? Is he taking something personally? Is he demanding perfection or nothing? Just naming the distortion begins to break its spell. It moves the feeling from being a command you must obey to being a signal you can investigate. And that is the crucial pivot. Because once you can identify the false alarm, you're no longer at its mercy. You're ready for the next step. Not just spotting the shadow, but actively retraining the guard how to respond. So you've spotted the false alarm. You've named the shadow on the wall. That's the first crucial act of separation. But if you stop there, you're just a better informed prisoner of the same system. The guard is still shouting, the alarm is still blaring. The goal isn't just better surveillance. The goal is to rewire the alarm system itself. To move from being hijacked by an automatic reaction to executing a chosen response. This is the practice of cognitive diffusion, a term from acceptance and commitment therapy that simply means creating space between you and your thoughts. It's the skill of seeing the thought as a thought, not as a command or a truth. And the most reliable way to build that skill in the heat of the moment is with a field manual. A simple, 3-step protocol you run the instant the inner critic triggers. It's not about fighting the feeling. It's about changing the ritual that follows it. Step 1. Label the distortion by name. Out loud if you can, in your head if you must. Catastrophizing. Personalization. All or nothing thinking. This isn't positive thinking. It's precise thinking. You're not arguing with the guard. You're filing his report correctly. You're moving the experience from the emotional amygdala to the logical prefrontal cortex by forcing it into a category. Step 2. Thank the guard. This sounds counterintuitive, even absurd, when the feeling is dread or shame. But remember the parable. This system's core intent is protection. It's trying to save you from perceived threat. By silently acknowledging that intent, thank you for trying to protect me, you accomplish 2 things. First, you drain the urgency from the thought. Resistance fuels it. Acknowledgement disarms it. You're not agreeing with the alarm. You're acknowledging the alarm exists. Second, you reaffirm to yourself that this is a functional, if misfiring, part of your own mind, not an alien invader. Step 3 is the master stroke. Redirect. Immediately, gently, turn your attention to the next smallest, physically concrete action you can take. Not finish the report. Not solve the problem. The action must be so small that obeying the false alarm is actually more effort than doing it. Type 1 sentence. Open the research tab. Sketch 1 box on the diagram. This is how you retrain the system. You are proving, through consistent microaction, that the shadow was not a tiger. That sitting with the uncertainty and taking a tiny step did not result in catastrophe. Every time you run this protocol, label, thank, redirect, you are doing 2 kinds of training. You are training your conscious mind to pause and choose. And you are training your subconscious guard that its most frantic alarms do not require a full village lockdown. The relief doesn't come from the thought disappearing. It comes from you no longer obeying it. The energy that was bound up in the internal struggle, the arguing, the freezing, the self-recrimination, is freed up and redirected into the world, into motion. This is the pivot from being managed by your mind to managing your focus. The inner critic may always speak up, but its volume knob is now in your hand. And with that knob in hand, you're ready for the final, proactive shift. Because a well-managed system is good, but a resilient system is better. It's time to move beyond damage control and start building the mental environment where these false alarms grow quieter and less frequent to begin with. So you have the protocol. Label, thank, redirect. It's the field manual for the moment of crisis, the tool that stops the spiral. But the ultimate goal isn't just to get better at putting out fires. It's to build a space where fewer fires start in the first place. This is the shift from damage control to architecture, from managing the critic to cultivating the mental environment where it simply holds less power. And to do that, we need to talk about a different kind of capital. Not money, but focus capital. Focus capital is the reservoir of mental clarity and resilience you build through small, daily investments in attention hygiene. It's the compound interest of a mind that works for you. Think of it this way. If your inner critic is the guard shouting false alarms, then focus capital is the thick, quiet walls of the village itself. The stronger the walls, the less every rustle in the bushes feels like a siege. These investments are mundane, almost boring. They're things like a single tasking ritual for the first hour of your work, phone in another room, only one document open. They're like scheduling worry time. 10 minutes in the afternoon where you let the guard voice all its concerns on paper so it doesn't have to scream during your deep work. They're designing your physical and digital environment to make the right thing easy and the distracting thing harder. These aren't grand gestures. They're the mortar between the bricks. But if there's one keystone habit, one ritual that builds focus capital faster than any other, it's this: the daily focus anchor. This is a non-negotiable, short period, anywhere from 20 to 90 minutes, dedicated to deep work on a single, meaningful task. Not urgent email, not reactive busy work. Something that moves a needle. Its power is twofold. First, it's repeated practice and sustained, voluntary attention. You are literally strengthening the neural muscle of focus, teaching your brain what it feels like to stay in the lane you chose. And second, and perhaps more importantly, it creates tangible, daily evidence that contradicts the inner critic's oldest, loudest story. What story? The story that you can't do it, that you'll get distracted, that it's too hard, that you're not capable. The focus anchor proves that wrong. Every single day, you finish the session, and you have a small, concrete result. A page written, a design sketched, a problem solved. You have proof. And over time, this evidence systematically weakens the critic's narrative. The guard might still shout, "This is too much. You'll fail." But you now have a memory from just this morning of you succeeding. The voice starts to sound less like truth and more like an old, anxious habit. This is how you build a mind that works for you. Not by silencing the guard in a final, dramatic battle, but by building a life of such consistent, quiet capability that the guard simply runs out of convincing things to say. Mastery, then, isn't the absence of the inner critic. That's a fantasy. Mastery is the skilled redirection of energy. You take the energy that used to fuel the spiral of anxiety and self-reproach, and you redirect it into this self-reinforcing cycle. Action, followed by evidence, which builds calm authority, which makes the next action easier. You are no longer at war with a part of yourself. You are the architect, using all the materials, including the vigilant, sometimes overzealous guard, to build something resilient. You began this journey seeing a saboteur. You learned to see a misguided protector. And now, you get to build the world in which that protector can finally, mercifully, stand down. Your focus is not something you lose and find. It is something you forge, day by day, anchor by anchor. And the mind you build is your own.